One of the things that I literally just learned today, because I don't do payroll in Puerto Rico, that the Puerto Rico-specific 941 was retired at the end of 2023. And so the reason that I found this out today is because Thursdays are when I do all of my sales calls. I've figured out that if I group all of the types of calls that I take to be just for a short block of time, it allows for better flow, my being able to get work done and have my other meetings and manage my business and do the work on my business as well as in my business. If you are still having like wide open calendars, I would definitely recommend shifting that to limit the amount of time that you are taking different types of calls. Anyway, back to how I learned that the 941 PR was retired at the end of 2023. I had a consult with a bookkeeper who has a client who has both US based employees and it has a location in Puerto Rico where they have several Puerto Rican employees and they do their American payroll in QBO and they've got a Puerto Rican company that does the payroll for the Puerto Rican employees. Both of the locations are in one business, so there's one EIN. Through the end of 2023, you would file a regular 941 for your American employees and a Puerto Rican 941 or 941 PR for the Puerto Rican employees. But the IRS has been consolidating and eliminating forms the last couple of years so they can systemize their business a little bit. And they took the 941 PR and the 941 SS and combined it into a Spanish language 941, which is the same form as the English version of the form. So what would happen with this business with the one EIN and the two different locations in two different countries was that QBO would file the 941 and the Puerto Rican payroll company would file the 941. The IRS is only going to accept one of these forms now instead of both. Most of the time, it just so happens that the QBO one is being filed first and the Puerto Rican one is being filed second, which means that it is being rejected. The fix for this is to take both of the American 941 and the Puerto Rican 941, add those wages together, and file a 941X. The problem is the client has been cashing the refund checks that they were getting for the quote unquote overpayment of the 941 taxes because, again, both were correctly submitting the tax payments on time to the IRS. And because it's all under one EIN, it's the same form now. The IRS is like, oh, well, you just significantly overpaid us, so we're going to refund half of the payment that you made. And because the client didn't listen to the bookkeeper and didn't hang on to them, they deposited them. They are getting when these amended 941s, 941Xs get submitted to the IRS, they're going to owe the amount that they were refunded. Plus, they're also going to have two different types of penalties that are going to be added. One is a failure to make a proper tax deposit, and one is a failure to pay. The failure to pay is because there's a balance, just that any balance at the end of a 941 that's not paid by the due date is a failure to pay. I'm going to guess that they were a semi-weekly or at the very least a monthly depositor. All of the taxes that were correctly deposited on time, but then were refunded, that wipes out the timeliness of the deposit. when the correct tax gets reported, they're going to have failure to make a proper tax deposit. And a little nuance when you're filing a 941X is you do not send in a new Schedule B unless the IRS requests it. And generally, in cases where you're essentially doubling the amount of tax that is due on the 941, they're going to send a letter that says, hey, we received and we're processing this, but we need more information. Please fill out and return the enclosed Schedule B. If you can get a Schedule B out of the software, it saves you a lot of time. Otherwise, you have to pull a weekly payroll or run a payroll summary for every single payroll, add up the taxes, put that on the Schedule B in the correct place, and then the IRS will issue the penalty based on when the tax deposit was due. So they're going to get hit with quite a few penalties just because they didn't follow the instructions. This particular client is a little difficult to work with because they want to keep two separate payroll companies. They don't want to change, even though the accountant has found a couple of different solutions for them where the US that'll do both US and Puerto Rican payroll all together to eliminate the need for filing the amended return. So I suggested that they tell the client they're going to have to increase their billing by at least $200 to $300 every single month to account for the additional compliance, which really falls in line with I charge $675 to do an amended 941 because there's usually a lot involved with it. Plus, we always include one abatement request with each form that we do. This is a really long story, but it will help if you have somebody, and I've run into this before, where they have two different payroll softwares for the same EIN because some people wanted same day deposit and others were good with 2-day deposits. So they had both QBO and Gusto for payroll. And I didn't have to amend W-2s or anything for these guys, but the 941s and the 940s all had to be amended. And for some reason, the state accepted both the returns for Gusto and QBO and just added those together. So I didn't even have to do amended state returns, which most of the time the state's going to accept one and reject one, just like the IRS. They'll accept one and reject one, even if it's coming from two different sources. But just in case you guys run into the more likely scenario that you guys are going to run into is that the client will have employees in two different softwares that either run concurrently or they change from one software to another, and an amended return will be needed because the payroll that you filed the return quickly because there was no payroll at the end of the quarter. And even though you've correctly turned the payroll off, for some reason, it's an issue that's industry-wide. It doesn't matter what software. They start the automation and they don't stop it even when you correctly fill out everything to stop all the automations. So that's a more likely scenario, is that they'll have more than one software and then you just take both of the 941s that are created by the software and fill out an amended 941.